India. Both my earlier speaker, my predecessor spoke about risk-taking and issues like that. All of this boils down to how the enabling environment is. Trade policy is very critical to begin with, and historically we've been dealt a very bad blow, largely because of the colonial rule, and thereafter we've had an import substitution where we actually had an infant industry agreement. Once that went away, that sudden dropping of tariffs led to a kind of deindustrialization, and now we are again picking up. The main problem again is, as I will come up in certain areas, is that we still are not being able to deal with competition from abroad, and hence some of the regional trade agreements that the multilateral, the WTO is not operating well. So therefore countries have actually gone into regional trade agreements, and that is creating a lot of problems within the Indian manufacturing sector. Some of these issues I'll come later. The second is the energy policy, which is again, the carbon emission is becoming a major issue. This is here where a lot of work is being done by the government of India. It will take some time for this switch to happen from coal-based to the renewables. Then there is regulatory policy. We heard from Mr. Chakravarti's speech that, how Tata Steel was able to learn from its mistakes. This is where governments find it very difficult to learn from its mistakes, even though it knows what those mistakes are. It keeps continuing to do that. And it does it in different forms. It does away with, say, manual work. It goes into electronic, but the electronic essentially becomes non-electronic because you have all kinds of glitches in those kind of, I don't know if there are any exporters. One of the main body for the exporter is an organization called the Director General of Foreign Trade. And all exports that export benefits are now electronically done. The DGFT website does not work for 15 days a month. Now, we are supposed to be an IT superpower, but this is the state of what the DGFT is. And we know what the problems are. There are problems of manpower issues. You need the system to be upgraded. That requires money. The money does not come from the finance ministry, so you have all these kind of issues. But there are good examples also, and the government, maybe slowly, but it's trying to develop. A good example for that matter is the passport office. After it was given to TCS, you have seen, those of you who've been to the passport office, have seen the remarkable efficiency that has come in. And there is now a thinking that the help of the private sector, companies like TCS, Infosys is already doing in case of GST, their help will be taken more in when it comes to delivering services with regard to regulatory agency. The manufacturing labor force. This is another area where you have the Prime Minister's skill development initiative. This is also a takeoff from the national skill development agencies of the previous government. A lot of investment is required because this is where, even though Nehru is possibly passé, but Nehru used to say that modern machines requires modern mind, and therefore the only way you can think, do, act, take risks, see how to cover the risk, how to hedge against the risk, would enable sort of skilling the humans. So therefore, manufacturing, labor force development, skill taking is very critical. Mr. Das would be the right person to talk about all that. Then there is tax policy. And with tax policy, what I haven't added is also the financial policy. One of the reasons, it is so surprising that, take the Reserve Bank of India Act. There has been, the reason why I mentioned Reserve Bank of India Act is largely in the context of demonetization. The Reserve Bank of India Act is an act of 1934. The 1934 Act came by a committee which was set up in 1924. The 1924 committee was actually set up as a result of a committee that was set up in 1914. So it is, it is that British legacy that we still have of forming committees and not doing anything. And even in 1934, you will not get it now, but if you see the amendment that happened prior to the MPC committee was set up last year, you will, if you read the preamble to the 1934 Reserve Bank of India Act, you will see, you remember that 1934 was in the midst of the Great Depression. And the Act says that since the situation currently is in a state of flux, the international situation is a flux, what we are proposing are essentially temporary measures. That is, from 1934 onwards till 2016, India's monetary policy was governed by a temporary act. And hence, this is the same case in case of tax policy. You will have retrospective legislation. You have circulars which